There we go. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Primetime Podcast. I am Dan Ram, your host, alongside my co-host here, as always, Long Island's own Mark Zim. Tonight, we got a very special guest. Very, very big part of the BBWF from the 2016 era on up. He has been an in-ring competitor. He has been a general manager. And right now, we need everyone to get ready for Reedy. So, ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight, none other than Ken Reedy.
What's up?
All right. So right before we get down to business here, we gotta pay the bills here, because now this kind of helps us do so. Ken, I'm sure you know it's about when running a podcast of your own show. You got to have some sponsors. Well, we'd like to give a couple quick shout outs to two sponsors here for the show. One is Anthony over at Artistic Signs in Fairfield, New Jersey, providing signs, banners, vehicle wraps, floor wraps, big events, small events. Anthony does it all. His eye for detail, his quality, his love for the business. He's got everything you need to get your business noticed. Second one, Zim's not too fond of a promotion like this, but you might benefit from it. We got a really good connection with a company called Muscleicious Foods. So they provide protein packed pudding, no Cosby references at all. Straight up protein packed pudding with flavors like cookies and cream, strawberry cheesecake, peanut butter and jelly, which is I'm a huge big fan favorite of. S'mores and more. You could also get protein balls, protein loaded brownies, all kinds of good stuff. You can check them out, Muscleicious Foods on Instagram, or visit muscleiciousfoods.com. So we'll turn down Kiss, Tears Are Falling, and we'll get right in it. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. I'm really psyched to be here, talking some wrestling.
Absolutely. So let's start from the beginning here. You get started in wrestling. How, where, when, why? Give us the story.
Well, I mean, I've been a fan as long as I can remember. And I went to Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I became friendly with Dave LaGreca, who hosts Busted Open on Sirius XM. And just was like, hey, why don't I try doing something like this? So I had my own podcast for a bit. Just talking wrestling. And honestly, what wound up happening is, I mean, you know how the egos can go and wrestlers, especially with some independent guys. And I started like hearing like those rumbles, how can he say anything about wrestling? He's never taken a bump. He's never done. So I was just kind of, all right, well, I'll go and take a bump. Like I can do it. I mean, it might be a little old to be making my wrestling debut, but I was like, if the whole thing is like, I can't critique wrestling because I've never taken a bump, well, I'm going to go show you that I can take a bump.
You've kind of always embodied that type of mentality just from the second I met you. You've always seemed to be, from stuff I've just seen you do, like, if there's something out there's being done and you look at it and you're like, hey, I could do it. You go out and you do it. I'll give you all the credit in the world, man. I mean, you're also a performer. You're a singer, right?
Yep. I try.
Right. But you're like kind of like a lover of just going for it, man. Like the beard gimmick you did, where you grew the beard out real long, you shaved it off for, it was a donation, I believe, or like a fundraiser, right?
Yeah, we did. I grew it longer than this, and my mom hated it. That kind of prompted the whole, hey, I work with people with disabilities, so I was basically like, if I can raise over $1,000, I'll shave the beard off. And cool. At that point, like once I decided I was going to do the fundraiser, I stopped trimming it. I stopped really caring for it at all. Just wanted to get as big and scraggly as possible. Right. We raised $1,400, so the beard came off.
That's awesome. And you've also you did the bodybuilding competition too, man. Like,
yes,
you totally went for that. You have, what I've always admired about you, as in the wrestling side of things and as a friend, is that, dude, you want something, you go for it, and you get dedicated. Like, you become extremely dedicated, and I've always admired that about you, man.
I'll tell you one thing about Ken Reedy. He really is an inspiration. When I was younger, I used to think, oh my God, life is going to end at 30, right? You hit 30 and you're like, it's not so bad. You're still, it's kind of young. Chicks are still good looking, Then you hit 35, you're like, is it over? No. And you hit 40, then you're like, what? Ken Reedy seems like as he gets older, he's getting younger. I mean, he's getting involved with all the stuff. When we last left him, no, I'm dead serious. When we last left him, you know, he was wrestling, and I mean, and I think I'm old. I'm the youngest person here, by the way, and I probably look, I'm in the worst shape of my life right now, and I look dead tired. That's what 2 kids will do to you. But the inspiration here is the fact that here's this guy that, I'm not gonna say you're way older than me, you know, but here's this guy that's just going for everything, and you're in better shape now probably than you were probably 20 years ago. Am I?
I'm definitely, I mean, shape is something, I mean, I'm definitely stronger, and I'm lifting more than I did probably in my 20s. You know, I mean, what was interesting, I mean, it's funny because it stemmed really from one story. Like, I had a group of friends that we play football every Sunday. And I remember when I turned 30, and he was younger than me. He was, I think, like 28 or so. And I was like, oh, we're going to play football this year. And he was like, oh, dude, I'm getting too old for this. And I was like, wait, what? And that was like the kind of like, I look at that as like the starting point for me, that like, I just decided I'm not going to let age dictate what I can, or what I'm supposed to do, what I'm not supposed to do, you know. So it's been like that for a while. Like, my first powerlifting competition, I was 35. I made my wrestling debut in my 40s, and I was 48, I guess, when I did my first bodybuilding competition.
That was what, last year or year before?
2 years ago. I mean, last year's a blur, so nothing happened last year.
And
Wait,
last
are
year's
you
just been erased.
Well, before, are you turning 50 this year?
I'm turning 50 next year.
Yeah.
Oh, next year. Okay, all right. So we'll just
Next year,
we got to make sure we got to
2022 is 50.
Cool. So we got to book the ring for next year. Then we got to plan that.
Yeah.
All right.
At this
And what
point,
I've learned,
it's unbelievable. I mean, like I said, now there's this little birdie in my head whenever I think like, oh, I'm too old, you know, for this. And, you know, the guys down the block, they want to get together for some roller hockey. And, you know, my knees are bad. I'm like a walking stiff board. But then I get to think, it's like, am I really too old? I'm like, no, wait a minute. What would Ken Reedy do? and then that's it, you know, and then I'm down and I'm put on the skates, and, you know, I'm serious. I'm not even blowing smoke up your rear, you know, I'm dead serious about this. And it's really interesting. And it kind of lessens the whole stigma of getting older. The whole, you know, was a WWKR. What would Ken Reedy do? Yeah, that's right.
Well, I was saying, like, I mean, like, I don't know, like, and medicine is getting better, and people are living longer, and it's just, I really don't get that mentality of getting to a certain age and saying, I'm too old for this. Like, it's one, look, if you develop chronic situations, you have an injury, you have, like, that's a different ballgame. But just to kind of give up on life on some levels and say, hey, I'm too old for this. I don't understand that. And I don't think it's healthy. And I don't think it's, you know, I see a lot of friends of mine who are getting, like, their kids are getting older, and their kids are getting ready to go out to college. And it's like, they don't have any hobbies. They don't know, you know, it's like that empty nest syndrome is pervasive and a huge detriment to, like, all right, now what do I do? And it's like, 100%. There's so much you can do. Just go and do it.
Yeah.
What I find being, I'm an old parent, you know, I had my first kid at 38. What I find is most of these parents are just, they have nothing going on for themselves. They're just living vicariously through their children. That's all they're doing. And it's kind of pathetic in a way. I mean, it's sad, you know. What are your hobbies? You know, you're trying to get together for a cocktail party. All they want to talk about is their children. I don't care. You know, I'm sure that's great, but what are you about? But a lot of these people don't know, and I guess that catches up to them as you can see now when they get older. It's like, what's going on now? Little Junior's out of the house, and what do I do now? Right. I don't have an identity of my own. So
I'm looking at it like this in common sense. I mean, we talked with Double A the other day. He has 2 daughters now. You have 2 yourself. The Dragon didn't even show up because he's got a son. People don't tell me I look my age. I wouldn't have guessed Ken 50. So I guess the secret is no kids. I guess this is.
No, you're 100% right.
No kids. Get a dog.
No kids. All right. So when you got into the training side of things, did you start out at IWF?
Yeah, that was my first foray into the ring, and I was going back and forth with starting taking class at ECPW or IWF, and I just love the setup that they had at IWF. I mean, it was really a quality setup. So I, you know, wound up going there.
Now have you seen? You never went. That's right. When you started there, they were in Nutley.
Yes.
Have you ever seen? If you look at some of the older BBWF footage from us, we were there when it was in Woodland Park, and it was not a. It was it was a nice facility, but it wasn't set up like he had it when you guys got there. I mean, he really put a lot into it when he moved over to the Nutley Center. I really liked the setup when I first walked in. I was impressed.
It was a great setup. The only issue I had with it was that I wish they did more with it.
Right.
I looked at that setup and I was like, this is a weekly internet show. Like you can set the. I mean, I was thinking of like old NWA kind of stuff, and that setup at IWF could have easily a couple cameras. It had great lighting. You had a legit ring entrance. Mm-hmm. It looked clean.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do much to kind of create a television studio where you could have easily had a weekly program running out of there. Get two commentators to start the show off, standing in front of the ring like they used to do back in the day, and then jump to the. I thought there's a lot more that they could have done creatively. That just, to me, they missed the boat.
And I'm sure in New Jersey, there's got to be plenty of Lance Russell imitators. So you could have gotten like a guy like that, like an old school type of Lance Russell character.
It was funny because Justin knew Kevin for a long time. Double A knew Kevin Knight from a long time from William Patterson. They were on the radio station together, and he connected me with Kevin, and then we started doing shows at the IWF Center in Woodland Park. And then I think it was a flood. I think it was a flood that took the building out. Yeah. And he had just stopped. And we would always, Kevin's a big Kiss guy, obviously. We would always see Kevin at not just the Kiss concerts down in the PNC Arts Center, but also like Crew Fest and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Kev, you're gonna bring it back. You're gonna bring it back. No. And he just never really went into it. And all of a sudden, boom! One day, Nutley was open and ready to run, and there it was. And when I saw it, when I came that one day, I was loving it because I went there. I think I went there one night when you guys were training there because I had some gear stuff. Kevin was going to try out for me and stuff. And then I
think you're right.
And then I went there when you guys did a show. I think were you in a tag match with Cash? That was like the first time I think I saw you guys. I know it was before the one night only show.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. It may have been a tag match, but no, because maybe it was a tag match, but we had different partners.
I think I thought it was you and Michelle versus him and
Aaron.
Probably Aaron. Yeah, Aaron Winter. That's right, Aaron Winter.
I think that's right.
The arch nemesis of the All-Star.
Yeah, well, Michelle was the best wrestler out of all of us in the ring.
Right? I definitely got to get her on the show.
Aren't you supposed to say that, or?
Yes, I'm supposed to say that, but I've always said look, I'm bigger and stronger, and I get it, but she's much more athletic than I am.
Yes.
Like coordinating. You don't have to agree that fast, but she is much more athletic than I am. And she started. She was there. I mean, but really, that whole, like I said before, like that idea of, oh, you can't take a bump. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go take a bump. But Michelle started there before me, and going to shows. I mean, some of this is going to sound horrible, but some of the wrestlers there, I was like, I can do that. I'm not going to be great, but I can be at least that bad. Yeah. So I was like, all right, like let me give it a shot. But yeah, in a match like that, Michelle was definitely the most athletic out of the four of us.
Now let's bring it up to.
Well, what I find interesting. It kind of, while this is fresh in my head, everything's kind of like 2 degrees of separation and a small world. I'll explain in a minute. Kevin Knight, for example, he's a major New Jersey Devils fan. Okay, he's got season tickets. He does commercials for the Devils too. Yeah. As you know, I'm a huge Islander fan in the middle of this big, playoff run that they're doing. So I knew him separately through there. Ken mentions the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, which I used to know as the Hartford School of Broadcasting. They used to do those WFAN commercials, and I got interested. Yeah, I got interested in that. I ended up going to Hofstra for communications, but I really wanted to go there. And I remember that. And I know Dave LaGreca through his brother, Don, who was a huge, he's a hockey broadcaster. He does work for the Rangers now, but he did NHL Live on the. So it kind of like even though we're all in separate areas, you in New Jersey, you've always been in, anybody from Long Island always says anything upstate, and even Westchester's upstate New York. So
Yes,
you've always been there, right? But it kind of just feels like we all were just missing each other in all these little places that we could have been in the same place at the same time
no, you're right. Yeah.
years ago. And then we all come together in 2016 at you know where. So it just kind of boggles my mind how I guess the butterfly effect sort of works in strange ways where people come together when they could have came together a hell of a lot earlier.
Because here's the way I used to see it when coming into 2016, right? So we had the prior years of the BBWF, and the last show we figured out what it was 2009 was the last show we did. That's when we stopped.
February.
So we stopped February of 2009. So you know, I'm turning 40 now, and it's like, okay, well, let's do more. We'll do more. But like again, like when I reached out to, first person I reached out to, other than the guys who were originally on the show, was Prince. Hit him up right away. Always kept in touch with him. We got ECPW days and everything else, because that's where I trained. I trained at ECPW the day after Bret Hart lost to Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12, because I was a Hitman guy. I said, you know what? I'm going. I went to wrestling school. I trained with Gino. Nunzio was there. Devin Storm was there, who later became Crowbar, and Kodiak Bear. Those were the guys. Those were the guys that taught me. And you know, I always stay in touch with Prince. And I said, let me get him on the show. Then I remember Donovan from Kevin's school. Then and then I asked Kevin, who could I bring on board for the event? He named Vargas. He named Izzy, but Vargas didn't work the show. And then WrestlePro gave me some guys, and then Robbie ironically had messaged me maybe 3 weeks before the show. Robbie and I had always known each other because Robbie used to be a part of IWF for a little bit. But we never like really talked all that much, but so we were like familiar with each other, but not on that level. So when he hit me up, and then like kind of when we saw each other face to face that night, it was like, hey, I know we've known each other a little bit more than what we were thinking right here. Like, because I had also done some EPWE shows out in PA before I got back to doing this in Jersey, where I was the general manager and Robbie was on a couple of those shows. So now I got this group, and what I always saw, like, okay, I had Zim, Double A, the Marvelous One, the Dragon, getting these guys back on the show with me that have not only just been a part of the show, they've been my best friends for like so long. And now I'm meeting you, and Cash, Vargas. And
well, wait a sec. Wait a sec. You're talking about, all right, you're forming a show called One Night Only, right?
Right.
KenReedy, Sergeant Cash are not a part of it. They're in the crowd, from what I understand.
Right.
Now, we don't know how they knew about it because you didn't advertise the show that well.
I went to the IWF Center.
Okay.
So like that about a couple weeks ago, and I met a bunch of people, and I think I invited a bunch of you guys that were trained there that night to come check it out. And I think I booked Izzy.
Izzy was pushing it too, and Izzy's like one of the. I mean, it's so interesting. Like when you know, some of the names you mentioned, like Annunzio, who I'm very friendly with. And he's one of those guys that, like, he's such a good guy.
Yes.
That I get somewhat intolerant of some of the egos you wind up dealing with on the independent scene. Because I'm like, this guy's been there. He had a substantial story arc with Vince McMahon. He was a cruiserweight champion.
Yep.
He made it. If this guy doesn't have an ego, like, if you haven't gotten that far, like, check your ego. And a guy like Izzy, I honestly think Izzy is one of the best workers that
he's a sweetheart.
Izzy, what I love about Izzy is, and I'll be the first to admit my shortcomings in the ring. You know, as much as I appreciate the kind words, but trying to learn how to wrestle in your 40s is not the easiest thing. I can talk a bit. I studied theater in college, so being an entertainer to me is my strong suit. The physicality was tough for me to get down, but as I'm talking, like, the egos that you get involved with, Izzy, getting in the ring with Izzy wanted to make sure that the match was good.
Agreed.
And it didn't necessarily mean that he had to look good. And with someone like me, he knew that his job was to make me look better. Right. And he was so incredibly unselfish in the ring, which to me, my experiences was a rarity to see someone like that. Who, and I think he's so good. I mean, I think that He's someone who's very skilled. He gets it as far as the physicality of telling a story. And he's really unselfish with making sure, like, he doesn't care if he goes over, but he's going to make sure the match is over.
Right. And really, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And I don't see enough of that, especially on the independent scene. And Izzy, the problem with Izzy, out of all the people I know, probably needs more of an ego. Like, that dude is like too humble, but he's great. He's really great, and he's really good to work with, and he takes care of you, and he's going to make you look the best you possibly can look.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny when you mentioned Nunzio. Okay, like, I remember when I was excited when you guys made the connection and helped me book him on the show. And from the first time I met him, mind you, I said, I go, look, I haven't seen him since '96, you know, like, so like the first time I saw him again and we talked, and every time thereafter, whenever he showed up to an event, this dude took at least 15, 20 minutes aside with me, and we went to the bar and we talked. Like, like what we learned, like, he told me about his story. He asked me questions. The dude generally likes to get to know people. He's a great people person. Like,
yeah.
And he always told me every time I went and gave him his payday for it, you know, he always was like, listen, you know, I don't say this everywhere, but, like, you know, I had a great time here tonight. This was a great show. Like, this is a fun environment. And I think that's what matters to a guy like him after what he's accomplished. It's like, you know, you don't want to go out, you don't want to deal with the drama, you don't want to deal with the crap that you want to go and, like, say, be in a fun environment with guys that respect you, and being able to go out, work the match, entertain the fans, but know that you're going to have a good time backstage as well. And I think that's what we really put on a show with, is that we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of good crowds. We had a good crowd. We had good people in the crowd. Our crowds weren't always packed, but, like, we had good supporting system right there. And I think Nunzio was a big part of that. He really helped us out.
I agree. I mean, I think, you know, I wish it went longer. I thought we had something, and I thought we had something that could have been unique. And I mean, I look back on the apple picking episode, and I just think that when you look, I mean, the market is saturated with pro wrestling,
right?
And it's like everyone and their cousin, if they're a wrestling fan, they're either they find a way to be a promoter or something else. And I was always a big fan growing up of Wrestling TNT. Remember the Vince McMahon had the talk show. It was like the late talk show.
Lord,
and they do sketches. And one of my fondest memories is Don Morocco and Mr. Fuji doing those. They would do Fuji Vice. Awesome. And I just thought that stuff was so intriguing and fun and so memorable. And I felt like the apple picking episode kind of tapped into that a little bit.
Oh God, yeah.
And again, the way things happen, you know, but I kind of felt like we were on the verge of having, it was almost like a comedy show about a wrestling promotion.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, this is something different. Like, there's nothing like this online.
I am so glad.
Spot fest. So it's like, this could be something. I
am so glad you brought this up, because now, if you had been listening to the previous episodes, everybody kind of asked me, because I'm one of the bridges from the 06 run to the 16 run. And they asked me in the last episode, we had a discussion with Double A, and you asked, what did you like that 2016 show coming from the 06 to 09 run?
Right.
And I said, absolutely not. I hated it. And I explained why. If you recall, and I don't know, Ken, have you been looking in the BBWF archives? Did you see some of the work from 06 to 09?
I have not.
You have not. Okay. So basically the difference between the BBWF and any other independent promotion is that we made storylines. We weren't probably the best athletes in the world. I can attest to that personally, but we knew how to tell a story. We weren't exactly putting just two guys together. It didn't make any sense. Who cares if they win or lose? That's what I thought One Night Only was. And that's what I was like, I don't want to do this. Who cares about a match with just two guys that they just put together? Stan Styles versus somebody else. Like, great performers, but I don't know what the storyline is. The minute that there was an early Ken Reedy promo with Sergeant Cash, it was just out of nowhere. It was an American Bulldog promo that you put on. I don't know if you recall. It was just a random promo that they popped up, the two of them. And all of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? these two guys who weren't even on the one night only card were shooting this interesting promo. I started to get invested and cared about, who is this American Bulldog? Who is this Sergeant Cash? And all of a sudden I'm like, all right, cool. We got some sort of a storyline. We got some sort of a personality going.
Right.
And it kind of took me back into getting more excited about where the BBWF was going to go 2016 and beyond, because, I wanted a personality. I wanted a story. So Ken Reedy and Sergeant Cash were a bridge to satisfy my requirement of, not just having random people together. I want to be invested in somebody.
Well, that means a lot, because that was like, knowing that and being, and people, there are other people probably that didn't realize that I was self-aware, but I was self-aware enough to know, like, I know what I can and can't do in the ring.
Right.
I was not going to be a spot monkey. I have a career.
That's not what it's about.
I have to go to work. I can't get hurt. So my main focus was, can I put together a storyline? Can I put together something that's gonna make people want to watch and want to see what happens next, even if it's ridiculous? And that's why, I look back on that apple picking, and that's wrestling TNT. It's vaudeville.
Yep.
It's like, it just, all these things, but it also facilitated certain storylines.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Cash hunting me down in like the vaudevillian style, and
yep.
You had all these things. Pink Scorpion kind of being I almost felt like the way she was used, if like the show Little Shop of Horrors, and the three singing girls that kind of make like they do commentary on like the entire show. Like Pink Scorpion almost filled that void. Like she would pop in, kind of do her little thing, and then pop out. All the characters, and it was one of those days where like we all got along and we all worked together.
Yeah.
And we got to showcase the characters. So again, like when I look at other, to your point, Mark, when you look at other wrestling promotions, like, do they even establish characters? And
No.
that episode established characters. Like everybody, if you watch that and then afterwards watched a match, you kind of had an idea of the entire roster and where everybody on the roster was coming from.
It's not rocket science. That's what I always say. I've been to millions. I was a huge wrestling fan. I don't like the current mainstream product, but if you go to a lot of independent shows, they just put two guys together. Maybe they're going to put on a great match, but like you said, the term spot monkey. I always liken back to the whole Andy Kaufman, Jerry Lawler thing. Mm-hmm. You knew that Andy Kaufman is not a great wrestler, right? But he drew that crowd, that sellout at the Mid-South Coliseum. And, the match was nothing. It was disqualified over a pile driver. It lasted like 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. But that was the greatest, 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes ever, because you wanted to see Andy Kaufman, this guy from Hollywood, just get his, butt handed to him. And it's a lot better to me than just, here's this guy, here's this guy. They're going to put on a 1 hour clinic, but for what? Why are they fighting?
Right. And I'll tell you something, and honestly, to like what you're saying, one of my proudest moments in the ring was I was wrestling on a show for ECPW. And we got booked second to last, which was kind of cool. That Gino had the confidence enough in us to be the match before the main event. So we got to make sure the crowd is hot. And I remember distinctly backstage, Gino not being happy with the match before us because they went over. Mm-hmm. They were all about getting their stuff in, and the crowd was dead. Right. And he was headed towards the end of the night, and he was like, the crowd is dead. And in that match, I was wrestling Cash. All-Star Michelle was Cash's valet, and Gino had this woman, her name was Luscious Lynn, who
remember this.
She was my valet.
Yeah.
And the four of us got together before the match and said, let's get this crowd back. And we made that agreement, like with the four of us. Let's tell a story. Let's get this crowd back. And we went into the ring and we just gimmicked my beard. that's what we did. And Cash would pull the beard and the ref wouldn't be looking, and I would be pleading with the we kept doing beard spots. Then I was, then we, I got my stuff in. But I'll tell you honestly, I think there was a hip toss in the match. I think that was the only wrestling move.
Wow.
I think maybe we had one wrestling move, but the crowd was hot, and the crowd was into it, and the crowd hated me. And Luscious Lynn and All Star worked the crowd outside of the ring. Lynn was so unselfish with her performance, and we didn't know her beforehand, but she bought right in to everything. And we just went out there, and there was just such a, when wrestling is done right, it's a beautiful art form, and there's a lot of give and take. And everyone was giving that night, like everyone was just, we're going to put over all 4 characters. Yep. And Lynn didn't know us from a hole in the wall, but she was like, I'm on board with this. And the crowd was into it. The crowd hated me. The crowd popped when I think we had a roll up out of nowhere, and the crowd popped when Cash won. I got out of the ring, started screaming at the crowd, and then the crowd was hot for the main event. And that was one of those. I had a job to do on that card, and my job was to get that crowd up for the main event, and I did it. Right. And that was like a very proud moment for me, because again, I'm limited physically what I can do in the ring, but we went out there and told a story. And I just, when it comes to wrestling, to me, it's an art form when you're telling that story. And if you're not telling a story, I don't get it. And it's just, I'll go watch gymnastics.
This type of conversation tugs at my heartstrings. When I was younger, I used to miss a lot of school. I was bullied in junior high school, if you can believe it. I loved One Life to Live. So I wanted to be a soap opera writer. And those soap operas, man, they get you hooked. You watch one hour.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you're like, what the hell is going to happen next? Especially if that hour is on a Friday. So
Right.
if you're waiting, you're waiting to see what's going to happen on a Monday. They got you. And that's what wrestling did. That Jake Roberts Macho Man storyline from '91.
Holy cow.
They didn't have to do any moves. They were just in the wind, just staring at each other. And my eyes were glued to the screen. I didn't even need any Adderall that day. Yep. It's just,
I mean, one of the, like when it comes, I'm a Hulk Hogan guy.
Yep.
I think Hogan gets like way too much criticism, because I have always hated when people say, well, Hogan was terrible in ring. You have to tell a story in the ring.
Wait, they haven't seen him
better at telling a story in the ring than Hulk.
They haven't seen him in Japan. Have you seen some of those drop kicks?
Oh, and he yes. I mean, that's the other side of it. Physically, he was good. He just he had his gimmick. But like there's two things that strike me, and like that ability to hold a crowd in the palm of your hand. And I remember, well, first off, I'll just say with Hulk Hogan, Rock and Hogan not saying a word, just staring at each other, and the crowd's getting louder. Like, tell me the guy who can do that today.
Right.
Like that to me, and they told a masterful story, and they told the story. And I give Rock so much props in that match, because the crowd was pro Hogan after the NWO tried to kill Rock before Mania.
Right.
Still, they were pro Hogan, and they were able to, they flipped the script, but the crowd still popped when Rock won. That is brilliant storytelling. I don't care what anybody says. And one story, someone outside of wrestling that always struck me as like, just incredible charisma, was Michael Jackson.
Yep.
And like that sort of thing, like Michael was an incredible performer, incredible dancer, just an incredible artist. But you could see him, he'd have the elevator under the stage, and he'd come out on stage, and the crowd would get hot. And you know what he would do? He would just stand there like a statue. And as he's standing there as a statue, the crowd is getting louder and louder. And somehow Michael was brilliant enough to recognize right before the crowd would dip, like it wouldn't dip. And then he would like reach up and grab his sunglasses. And the crowd would get louder.
Yep.
It'd get louder, and he'd still wait. He would stay there like this. And he'd wait and wait. And that split second before the crowd would start to dip, he starts lowering the sunglasses.
Yeah.
And then there are people passing out in the
I mean,
front row.
Prince was another guy like
A
that.
huge guy. I think
Yes.
Prince had that charisma also.
this was the major difference in my eyes too. Like you totally brought it from wrestling, that whole era of wrestling with guys that knew how to do this, to music. To me, I've seen a lot of concerts. I can go watch, but I want to see the performance. I've never been a big Kiss guy, but I'll tell you that Kiss is one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yes.
Motley Crue, Alice Cooper, Foreigner. I swear, I saw in 2009, I saw Van Halen with Earth, Wind, and Fire at Atlantic City. And right before Van Halen came out, the stage crew came out and they drilled the plywood down to the stage, and they did all the sanding. They sanded this thing down. And David Lee Roth, God bless him, at his age, and talking, this is 2009, was out there doing every jump, flip, because these guys were not just musicians. They were performers.
Performers, yeah.
They learned how to play to the crowd. So did Hogan. Like right now, the way all wrestling is, it's so oversaturated that nothing does. As much as you try to stand out, so little of it does stand out. And I think what happened too is that, going back to like the conversation about the difference with the primetime shows and why I think like you said, it could have been more, but then it wasn't. Hold that thought 1 second. To record. Okay, so what I was my point is to all this is, like, there's a difference between a performer in music and wrestling and everything else, and every day, just like you say, spot monkeys and guys who just jump all over the place and they're not connecting with the crowd. When we used to go see live shows that weren't televised, we loved those moments where the wrestlers would reach out and connect with the crowd and get them involved and do stuff, because that's what you wanted. To me, I will always say one of the best eras of Monday Night Raw, not moments, because they've had tremendous moments, but like the Manhattan Center. I truly loved it because it was a more smaller scale. And that's kind of like what I always wanted primetime to be. And now that I look back on it, my biggest mistake, my biggest mistake is in addition to some personnel problems, my biggest mistake is I got to a point where I thought that I had to bring in more and more talent to draw the crowd. And we talked about this a little bit, and here's how, from a promoter standpoint, where it's hard. So I work side and side with another wrestling promotion. They gave me the ring. We got the connection. Sometimes we shared talent, but I wasn't going to benefit from the big stars that they use because they were already there on a Saturday night or Friday night, and now they're doing our show on Saturday. So it didn't really work. And what would happen is the expenses were high. Now, I said this the other night, and this is with all due respect to the talent, because not all of it's on them. But you take a tag match. We had 2 really good tag teams that had some really good matches. We worked together. The Regos didn't exactly work well together, but in the ring, they knew how to do business, and they did a good job. That match would cost me $300. Now, I had one team that was coming from way out of the area that really wasn't going to bring anybody from their area to the show. I had another team that was in the area, and God forbid they even shared the information on the show. But everybody has a rate, and that match will cost you $300. So at $10 a ticket, are you guys bringing in $30? And I began to get to a point, in all honesty, where I love the primetime stuff. I love the Wednesdays. Yeah, it was exhausting, and then like you do all the show, and then you're hanging out with people that are becoming your friends and people that like, wow, okay, I'm clicking with these people. We're learning about each other as opposed to just doing wrestling stuff. Let's go out for pizza. Let's say, and like you guys must be at home sometimes almost midnight, But I looked forward to Wednesdays. It got to a point where I didn't look forward to the big shows anymore. I didn't, no matter what role I was playing in it, because it was more of a, man, how am I going to cover? And I was losing money hand over fist. I mean, I wanted to do something like No Exceptions when we did the Rumble. To me, I always wanted to do an event in which everybody who was in that Rumble was not in a previous match on the card.
All right.
So that locker room was 60 guys deep. It's a lot of people. So it was the most expensive show I've ever done. Now, had it paid off, sure. But I think, honestly, what we should have done was just stuck to the prime time and continued to build just the core group. But I wasn't the promoter for a long time. I listened to, a lot of people, and it led me down a wrong path. I trusted the wrong people. But then it's funny because a lot of these same people will say a lot of things about like how Gino runs ECPW. And like Prince and I have had conversations of, Gino's been around for a long time. His school's been around for a long time. He does business the way he wants to do business, but he's a happy guy. He he always gets a great crowd. He likes the guys he works with. He knows what he's doing. Same with Kevin. It's funny that the two people that will take the most criticism from everyone on the outside, they've had long careers doing this stuff. And I think it became too much too soon, and I lost control of it. But I always, like right now, the people that I want on the show that we're doing now with this Primecast podcast, and Zim and I have talked about who we wanted to have on, was the core group, the people that we loved being a part of it. And I remember when, you know, it was Brandy who had suggested the apple picking episode, and then it was the Halloween episode, and then it was I forget what else did we do. We did a couple other like gimmick themed events, but those are some of our best work. Like, yeah. And if you go back to the earlier days of the primetime stuff and you watch some of the skits we did, Zim has some infamous skits. Justin, I mean, we talked about it with him on the podcast. Double A.
You got to go back to the archives. He admitted earlier he hasn't seen the archives. He has to.
There was like, you know, I think there was the Halloween episode, and to me, like, it was almost symbolic of the essence of what, to me at least, what we should have been. Mm-hmm. Like there was a still picture, and it was all of us in our different Halloween costumes, and Robbie E was standing in front of us with kind of a and honestly, it reminded me a bit of the cover of the wrestling album. Yes. If you remember.
Oh yeah,
with I think it was Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura in the front, kind of holding their microphones,
pink suit,
just this cast of characters behind them, and I was like that still picture to me is the essence of what primetime should have been, because you had, I mean, honestly, you had a group at that point with that group that most of the people there would have run through a wall for you,
right?
The other people that wound up coming in, they wouldn't have. Like we were kind of a small group that believed in, and it may have been nothing, but we believed in the concept of primetime. We believed in the storytelling. We believed in the silliness. You know, I mean, some of the stuff that, like, you know, if it ever caught on and went viral, I mean, some of that stuff. I mean, remember when I spit up eggnog on Aaron? One point,
you went to throw it at Cash.
That's right, and I threw it on. I mean, right there. There's just some stuff there that, like,
don't forget, there's a lot of lost footage. I don't know if you remember, we were shooting some stuff upstairs when the coalition was going, and there was this great skit of us in some office upstairs doing something. I forgot what it was. That was lost. That never even aired.
I do. Now you're mentioning it.
I don't know what it was, but I thought it was wonderful. I forgot exactly what it was. But that was it was awesome, and it never even aired, and we lost it. So, and there's a lot of stuff that's lost. But
there was also some cool stuff like that. I remember, like, you know, when Nunzio came to primetime, it wasn't just him coming here to show up, do a spot, and leave. He brought his kid. He told his kid, even in an interview, to put us over, and then he spent time training the guys that were on the show. Like, that's huge. Robbie would do the same thing, and, you know, but you're right. I think what happened is outside influences, you know, like, you trust people. And me, my biggest flaw, Zim, you've known this for years.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's a huge flaw of yours.
Too nice.
Yeah.
Too nice.
And honestly, it became a positive environment. You know, I won't point out specifics, but I've wrestled and been around some toxic environments, and, like, you know, someone, I'll call her out, but someone like Erin was one of those people that I to me, very talented storyteller, a little reminiscent of Sensational Sherry, as a valet. Mm-hmm. Did not have Sherry's wrestling chops.
Right.
She had that
solid character. She, at times, her ego would get the better of her, but when she came to primetime, she kind of came and fit in with the philosophy, and, like, I had a hard time working with her beforehand. Yep. In primetime, it was kind of, all right, we're all in this together, we're all working together, and she was much more amicable to be around. So I think, like, philosophically, for at least a period of time, all of us there were kind of believing in the product that we were at least trying to put out there. We were just, and like we were saying before, we were trying to tell stories.
And I used to talk to a lot of the guys too, because I noticed a lot of the guys that came over that had great wrestling ability. Like then, like, you know, there were a couple people there that like had a hard time telling the story in the ring. And I remember like, not that he is amazing and he can move so well for a big guy. But I remember when I first saw Vargas lock up once with a guy, and he was, I think it was Cash actually. He was, or is he one of them? And I had said to him, I was like, listen, dude, you're like, I get it. Like, you may not, on some of the rosters you're wrestling on, you may not be the biggest guy, but you're the biggest guy here. So anybody you're locking up with, man, you need to press down on these guys. Don't let them come up to your level. You go straight up down on them. Like, and it was just little things that you would talk and just help guys put over in terms of psychology and how to work and basically play on your strengths. And it all involves storytelling. And we had a lot of angles that told really good stories. And the Christmas episode, that was another one where we did the Christmas episode, and I like, and I think it was, honestly, I think it was him and Brandy that came up with it, but it was the Matthias Glass being asked to read the night before Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, only on our show could you see something like that.
A guy that dropped off the face of the earth. He came back for a little bit and then he's gone again, you know?
I don't know what.
And in this day and age, it's impressive.
Yeah,
to just drop off the face of the earth. Everybody can find, you know, anybody can find anybody, you know?
It is, yeah, right. And I always thought his gimmick was great. I mean, it was a comedic act. Everybody knew it was a comedic act, but I guess some people just.
Yeah, listen, I'm Jewish. I wasn't offended by it. I mean, we're not going to get into a whole discussion by it. I get it.
I think that's part of, like, you know, and I've always been fascinated by the booking aspect of pro wrestling and how that works, because like a comedy act is great, but you can't do a show with all comedy acts. Like, you gotta,
right.
And it's like figuring out, all right, what's the best mix of talent and who, and I always look back on, I think WCW, the beginnings of the Monday Night Wars, when they started kicking WWE's ass.
Well, wait
like,
a minute.
To me, if you want to learn booking, now granted, if you have Ted Turner's budget, but if you want to learn like booking, like, I looked at those nitros and it was, you know, we'll give you, you know, a lightweight, your Rey Mysterios, your Juventudes, and we'll give you those guys like early on in the show for a lot of plunder, baby. And then your mid card, you had like Guerreros and Jerichos and Malenkos, like holding down your mid card. And then you had like the NWO and Sting and those guys holding down your main event. Like, to me, it was brilliantly booked that no matter what kind of a wrestling fan you were, you got what you wanted. If you loved Spot Fest, you got that. If you loved like big guys that just beat the shit out of people, you got that too. Like, they would give you everything over the course of an episode. Whereas now I feel like when you see the booking of a show, it's like, all right, 90% of the matches are spot fests, and it's rare you get any sort of decent promo. I mean, even, you know, Bully Ray brought up a really good point on Busted Open recently. Like, right now, I think Roman Reigns is, bar none, the best thing going.
Without a doubt.
The best thing going. Like me, who doesn't watch, I get captivated if I see him on screen, just the way he is, his stature, his the way he's looking at the camera. Yeah.
But Bully Ray made this point. He said, all right, so Roman Reigns, best thing going. Is he a John Cena? Is he a Rock? Is he a Hogan? No, he's not.
No.
He's the ceiling in kind of a bad era of the business.
Yep.
Now, granted, I think he's great. I think he's doing a great job. But when Bully Ray said that, I'm like, yeah, you know what? He's not at that level. And he's the best in the game.
Right. Right. And it's happy for him, but it's also sad in the same time. You know what I mean?
Right. And I love his stuff. I think his stuff is vastly entertaining.
Yeah.
I barely watch a full episode of anything more. But if I can catch like a Reigns match or a Reigns promo, I make sure to catch that.
It's highlights. That's what it is now.
It is.
Yeah, and that takes it, and it's a story. That's the thing. They're telling a good story with him. It's something to me that has lacked in professional wrestling in so long, and that's the whole thing that drove Primetime. And it's like why like I always wanted to keep the creativity going. And like as much as I loved you and Cash as like the faces and stuff when you guys first came in, I always want to say, what happens if we have you turn directly on Cash? You know?
Well, yeah, well, you brought that up. Like you were the one that inspired me. I'll put it out there to turn heel. I mean, it was, you know, whatever. We're being honest here, and then like
Sure.
I don't think like being an IWF. I don't think that the creativity was encouraged as much to kind of see where you're at and expand your character and look at what you might be good at and what you might not be. Like everyone, it was very cookie cutter. Like everyone, these are the moves that you do. And like I've said, I'm a guy that I can tell a story, I can talk a little bit, but I'm not going to impress anyone physically. I can do some strength moves, but like, you know, I'm not going to be doing spots. So Kevin decided I was a face, booked me as a face, and I was going to be a face. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like I was never going to win, you know, so I was a face that was never going to win.
Right.
And honestly, and I take a little bit of pride that I always made sure when I was in the IWF that when I lost a match, that I was the last one to leave the ring.
Right.
So I always I sold the finisher and I registered, but I always waited for the heel to leave. And then I kind of gave that, you know, agony of defeat kind of storytelling. And I would wait till the crowd started to kind of rumble a bit. And then I'd kind of work my way back to my feet.
Yep.
The crowd would kind of give me that like, oh, well, he tried really hard.
Yeah.
But I was like, I would get the crowd engaged. So that was the only way I could get over in the IWF because I wasn't being booked to win anything.
Right.
When I got to the BBWF and we were just kind of feeling things out at one point, and you brought me outside and you're like, let's just record a promo. And to your credit, you said to me, just whatever, just we don't even know if we're going to use this promo. Just here's the story, you know, promo away. And I just started riffing. And after it was done, you stopped recording and you looked at me and said, "You're a heel."
Yep.
And I said, "What?" And you're like, "No, you're a heel." And said, "Okay." And then you said to me, like, "What do you think about turning heel?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
And enter the man in the red chair because he's, God love him, but Zim is not a fan of anybody, as he refers to them as do-gooders. All right. And as soon as we talked about it, it was his show from there. Like, I think we should make Reedy do this and make him heel and ready for Reedy. Oh, it was the Zim show. If you want to take,
but the problem is that Reedy can talk. That was one of to use an example, like that was Ravishing Rick Rude's problem with Bobby Heenan, because you know Ravishing Rick Rude, he can talk, he can sell himself, but they put him with Heenan. So Reedy didn't need me per se, you know, like Wrath needed me because Wrath couldn't talk.
Or Matt.
But you know, it worked and it was fun. But yeah, I hate do-gooders. I always wanted you, Dan, to turn heel. You had this brilliant gimmick in your mind about a dream ruiner, that you ruin little kids' dreams.
Oh yeah, the dream
got a little dark, but I always thought that was phenomenal. But you know, Ken Reedy, he did great work as and I kind of felt uncomfortable being his manager because there really wasn't a purpose for me because he could talk. He could probably talk better than I could.
You promoted him well though.
But yeah, I mean, so, you know, it was just kind of like, it felt like I was like a nostalgic at, because I'd been doing this 10 years earlier with the BBWF, so they had to like put me to do something else. But if you even recall, I am like a complete tertiary to their feud. If you ever look at any of the highlights of their feud, I'm there in the video, but it's not like I'm really just not even there, which is great because that's the kudos. That's what should be. The eyes should be on the ring. But that was it was great to just be in the background for that. I'll tell you that much.
That was a great feud.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, that match we had, what was the other place? There was like the gym and you you escorted me down to the ring. I know it was like
I think we
myself.
tried to hang him off we tried to hang him from the ropes,
No,
right?
I think he's
Or that
talking
was
about.
another thing.
Right. Are you talking about the one we did at primetime, or the one we did like at a live show?
It was a live show.
Oh,
It
okay,
was,
okay.
It was myself, Cash, Vargas.
Oh,
it was. I think it was the match that, like, at the end, Fala interfered and like laid us all out.
Oh, DNet. DNet was the fourth one.
Yes, but yeah, that's right. And I just remember, like, and that's once you're playing heel, like, and I used to love getting in there and paying homage to whoever I could, whoever, like, an idol. Like when I turned on Cash, that was an homage to when Orndorff turned on Hogan. It was all, I mean, the way it happened was very,
Second time, right? Didn't he turn on him twice? Didn't Orndorff turn twice?
I don't know if I turned on twice.
Yeah.
There was one where I was like,
no, I'm talking about Orndorff. Wasn't there didn't Orndorff turn on Hogan twice? So I'm trying to remember which turn.
I don't know. He was a heel, and then he turned face after WrestleMania 1.
Yeah.
And then he was like allied with Hogan. And then there was the infamous tag match where it was Bundy and Stud versus Orndorff and Hogan.
Yep.
Hogan went to tag Orndorff, fell backwards, knocked Orndorff off the apron.
Yep.
Then Bundy and Stud started double teaming Hogan. Orndorff came in and cleaned house, took Hogan, raised Hogan's hand in victory, and then clotheslined him.
Yeah.
It was such a great, I mean, everyone talks, and not that it wasn't great, everyone talks about Shawn Michaels on Marty Jannetty, which is a great heel turn. But the Orndorff Hogan one there is so good, and it doesn't get mentioned nearly enough. But in the match with Vargas, Dionette, and Cash, I remember that was my homage to Guerrero, and I hit Vargas with a chair, and then tossed the chair to Cash.
Yep.
And then so when Vargas turned around and he no-sold the chair shot, which was awesome, he just turned around pissed. And I just looked at Vargas and went and pointed at Cash, and Cash was holding the chair. And that was, so I if I could, I tried to work homages in wherever it worked. It just, you find that it's a little bit easier to do that when you're a heel. Right. And it gives you a little more creative freedom to, like, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want.
Like you said, it did work. It worked out really well. You did a great job at that kind of stuff. Like little additions to the match. That was like your specialty. Like things you added in that people just ate up. Like you weren't seeing that in everyone else's match. It was all just, it was straight up, even at the live shows, any match outside of the original primetime crew, which, let's face it, with all due respect, I'm not saying they're not talented, but it was the same match you could see anywhere else. You know what I mean?
It made no sense either. There was nothing behind it, you know?
Well, I mean, to me, it's like what you're prioritizing. Like, I don't care if the crowd is popping. I don't care. I don't care, like, what, I am doing or not doing. If the crowd is into it, then that's my job. Right. So it's not like I don't get in there. I don't get into the ring to show off or to make people think, oh, look at how athletic he is, or look at how strong he is, or look at what it's. If the crowd is reacting, then if I can do that with a look or something silly, and honestly, I think Prince is brilliant at that. I think Prince is one of those guys that, like, he is not afraid at all to make himself look ridiculous.
Right.
That's what's missing.
He is all about the show.
That's what's missing.
About entertaining.
That's what's missing from the current product right now. Everybody wants to be, even if they want to be a heel, they want to be a cool heel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
that's what's weird. Like, wrestling's an interesting gig, because there's like guys who are like all-time greats, but on some levels, I don't want to say ruin the business, but contribute, like Hulk Hogan. I'm a Hogan guy, but his routine to end every match, all of a sudden, like, everyone had to do it. If Hogan got over with that, then everyone needs like a routine at the end of a match. WrestleMania 25, Taker versus Michaels, brilliant. But now if there's like a big match, there needs to be a ton of false finishes.
Yeah.
You know, it worked that one time, but they overuse it. Stone Cold, all-time great. But I think part of when you say things like that, like ruining the business, he kind of ushered in that era of the cool heel.
Yeah.
And the NWO kind of did the same thing. And I was a big NWO guy.
Yep.
And I'm taking nothing away from Austin, but they kind of changed the game. And then there's the whole merchandising thing that you want your merch to sell, which I get it. Everyone's got to make their cash. You don't know how long your career is.
Right.
So I get that rationale, but you know, really and truly, like a true heel should be selling zero merchandise, because everybody should just fucking hate you. Like that should be the truest heel. Should be nobody would ever be caught dead wearing a shirt of yours because you're an asshole. And we don't really see that as much anymore, you know. And when you think of guys that I grew up with like Roddy Piper, like there was nothing cool about Piper. There was nothing cool about him. He's wearing a skirt. He's got a Superman shirt on, and he plays the bagpipes. He was just an asshole, pure and simple. Like there wasn't anything cool about him.
No, and he didn't try that.
He didn't try it. And honestly, like that old school mentality was, if you were a heel and you got cheered, you were mad when you got in the back. If Piper was playing a heel and there was a spattering of cheers in that crowd, Piper would be upset at himself.
Yep.
You know, and you don't see that now. Like guys are okay if they get a pop. You know, it's like, because now they're cool. You don't see enough of that real heel. I mean, Reigns has got a little bit of that, but he's kind
not
of
all the way. Paul Heyman's probably one of the best heels.
Yeah, Heyman's a guy that like.
But Heyman's an old school guy, you know.
He's an old school guy.
Yeah, I mean,
but I miss those guys. I mean, that, you know, wrestling at its best, like we're talking about storytelling, it's a morality play. Plain and simple. That's wrestling. It's a morality play.
Yep. I think I respect
when you can operate in the gray for temporary periods of time to make it interesting, but really and truly wrestling is great when it's a morality play, when it's good versus evil.
Right.
The gray only work, like gray, Hogan versus Warrior, two faces. Who are you going to root for? All right, that worked for that match. But ultimately, the best matches are, you know, Hogan good, Macho Man bad. You know, those are the best matches. What was that?
Hogan and Slaughter, WrestleMania 7.
Hogan and Slaughter. You want, you know, good versus evil. And you want
Jake and Randy. I always go back to Jake and Randy. I mean,
Jake and Randy, you're right though.
I mean, that talk about psychological heel. That Jake Roberts, man, even now.
Oh, brilliant. But a guy like also like look at, if you want to look at anybody who's brilliant, look at Jake Roberts.
Yep.
Jake Roberts, cheesy Magnum PI mustache, a mullet, and a pot belly. And that guy was more intimidating than almost anyone else on the roster.
Oh,
like you were scared of him.
Yeah.
There was nothing physically imposing about that man at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and yet you were frightened of him. And when you look at a guy like Macho Man, who is the consummate athlete, a guy who could probably kick anybody's ass if he had to, and yet you believed that Jake was a danger to Macho Man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Look at when Jake had look at the musician they always paired Jake up with too, but they had Alice Cooper brought in. Alice Cooper was that same level. Like there's nothing physically intimidating about him, but you watched his stuff, you're like, damn, this guy's out.
But I mean,
he's creepy.
Yeah, it works the other way around too. Even Jake as a face, when you know he was blinded by the model, or when his pet snake was crushed by earthquake, you felt so much sympathy for him. It's just amazing. See, that's the type of talent that's missing. Where do the kids coming up now? Where do they learn that stuff? They're not learning it at the performance center. They're just learning how to do backflips off the top rope or whatever. Where do you go to learn that?
I remember.
I know it's weird. I mean, it's one of the things that's a shame that I to me, like the more also that fans know about things, and you know, the internet to me has ruined a lot of pro wrestling. Yeah. I remember getting in an argument with people about I'm gonna forget the number, but WrestleMania San Jose, whatever number that was.
I stopped counting after 20. So
and it was Cena versus Rusev. And I got in an argument with these fans that were like, Rusev should have won. And I was like, you had a foreigner who came in and was annihilating American wrestlers leading up to Mania, where he was going to fight the American hero.
Yep.
The American hero has to go over. That's the story.
Yep.
This foreign. Now, I fault the WWE because I liked Rusev and they didn't have something for him afterwards. And that's a problem. But that story arc, the American hero had to prevail. If the American hero doesn't prevail, where do you go from there?
See, to me, I think wrestling took a downturn, one from the internet. The internet totally has killed it. And I'll reference this. Look at Brett and Owen. You got two brothers, right? I remember reading about this. To me, that was one of my all-time favorite feuds. I loved it. I loved the way it was done. These guys,
great.
They were telling you straight up. Brett would say that if they even were traveling together, no internet at the time with that kind of stuff, they were traveling together, they would sit completely separate on the plane, not even talk to each other, just to hold the storyline.
That's another lost story.
Now, I mean, I'll give Heyman credit because he kind of tries to save things as best as he can. I remember I've seen this video before where everyone, let's face it, one of the most shocking things that's happened in wrestling, or the last big shocking thing that happened in wrestling, was Taker losing the streak. To me, I can't recall anything shocking since that really keeps your attention. And everybody was like totally shocked at this and that. Here goes Heyman completely adding to it and saying, well, how about this, man? Who else was going to take him out? Who else was going to beat him? And then he even flipped the script even more and said, in front of all those people, what would happen if Lesnar just said, let's say Lesnar was booked to lose, and Lesnar just said, you know what, screw it. I'm dumping him on his head and I'm taking it. Because once I do it, who's going to stop me?
Right.
You're not going to fire me because I'm going to be the hottest thing going. And he's right. And just putting that idea in people's heads, you're like, you know what? I think once the fans learn that they can control the show, once the wrestlers learn that they can control backstage more and more influencing and going to the fans to help that's what kind of killed wrestling.
Inmates running the asylum now, right? Is that, to use an old cliche?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I understand the wrestlers are talent. I understand they risk their bodies. I understand all that and this and that. But at the end of the day, you get a paycheck. You're an employee. You're doing a job. And I came from a different world where, you know what, if you're getting paid to do a job, you're going to do exactly what you're told to do. That's it.
Yeah, but that's a lost art across the country now too. You get these kids that are coming up that don't know how to pay their dues. They want everything handed to them right away.
Right.
And that's a problem.
It's also going to be said for believability. I mean, I admire any sort of talent level, but and the story arc with Daniel Bryan worked. But I'm supposed to believe a guy who's 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing pounds, is able to beat Randy Orton and Batista in the same match. I mean, and I know it's wrestling, and I know it's true, but I want to be able to believe that this could happen, and it just certain things, and then but then they'll turn around and I think Brock Lesnar becomes this ultimate badass. So Brock Lesnar's the real fighter, but it's you're telling conflicting stories.
I think what
before I forget, because I know we're running. We got the time click. We could talk about this all night long. I know we can't.
Right, we
could. But I have a daughter that's projectile vomiting on and off. So I'm on a short leash as it is. So I had one burning question, just to put things back into our guest, Ken Reedy. We could talk about this all night, but whatever happened to the Ken Reedy show?
It just kind of life.
Yeah.
It just kind of was.
I loved it. Because I love Blog Talk Radio.
I tried bringing it back. I haven't.
Because I was an early guy on Blog Talk Radio. I thought Blog Talk Radio was just mesmerizing for me because you could get callers.
Because you get callers.
You know what I mean? That excited me. I tried hundreds of radios. I tried an Islander radio show, never worked. But here's the Ken Reedy show. I thought I was telling Dan, I was like, we can turn the Ken Reedy show, have some BBWF guests, but that was towards the end, and it was, but I just wanted to know what happened to the Ken Reedy show. I've been waiting 2 hours this whole time to ask the question.
It was a time thing, and then it just became I don't know, it just kind of, I don't know, I felt like it kind of ran its course, but I've toyed with, I mean, like even talking now, like it's fun talking this stuff. So
Yeah,
bring it back. And the later episodes with Sergeant Cash as a co-host, that was gold. You guys had chemistry, so bring it back because I want to call in. That's all. That's all I waited 2 hours to say.
Just do the one night only thing. That's how you do it. Just make a one night only, and then see where it goes from there when you start doing it every weekend. I mean, I would eventually like to have a Zoom call where we get as many people as possible on it in one night and see
from all the eras.
What's that?
From every single era.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Without a doubt. Here's what I think. What I would love to, imagine if we took the era before 2016, and then we took the crew that we worked with the most and put them all together. Man, I mean, that would just, it basically would be like a 1980s, like you said, a comedy show.
I'm gonna rent a public access space on Long Island.
There we go.
And I'm gonna put in one of those Johnny Carson desks with a microphone, and we should just have a variety show. We should just do it for 12 weeks.
Why not?
Why not? All right. I'm gonna dig up my old
like we've already established. You're talking to two guys who we don't have kids, and we'll go and do anything because so dude. So here's a question though, Ken, and it's if I have to stress the if, because let's say if tomorrow we said, hey, we're doing a show in 2 months, and you decide you wanted to be on it, who would you want? Who would you want in that ring?
Oh, if I was gonna,
if you were gonna compete, who would you want to face?
That's a good question.
And would you go?
I don't know. I mean,
which Reedy would we get?
What was that?
Which Reedy would we get?
That's an equally good question.
Oh, you gotta have the heel, Reedy.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely go heel. I mean, there's definitely some unfinished business with Cash that needs to be taken care of. I mean, we had our what was it, our 5-match series that we ended at 4.
I loved every single match.
So, and that's just it. Like with him, like we had good chemistry, and we used to. I mean, we're pulling the curtain aside, but like backstage, we would always look at each other and say, "All right, we'll apologize after the match," and then we go into the ring, and it's like
he's not kidding.
No, he's not, and him being a military guy. I mean, he's seen some shit, so. It's like, we would do like chair shots and he'd be like, you need to really hit me.
Here is a wonderful, talking about military guy, wonderful primetime story. You see, this is what we got to get back into primetime. This is the focus. Military guy there. I don't know if you guys remember this, and we got to get Cash back on because he most certainly remembers this. There was this just misguided soul. He was drunk. He had a paper bag of alcohol just walking around outside Gino's facility. And Cash brought him in and was speaking with him to see how we could get him some help.
Well, really?
Does anybody remember this? This happened.
I don't remember this.
You gotta ask.
You got.
Unless I dreamt this.
Was it you?
Unless this was like you were talking before that. Remember, I hung Cash.
Oh my!
One of the matches, I hung him outside the ring.
That was
if you remember again, my homages. Morocco and Fuji did that to Steamboat.
Yep.
With the belt from Steamboat's Road.
Yep.
So if I could figure out a place to loan a tribute somewhere, I would. And that was, but Cash was always that Cash puts himself in danger working with me because when my creative brain starts going, I'm like, what if we do this? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, do that to me. And he was like, what if we hung you? And oh yeah, sure, that would look great. Like, okay, Cash just says yes to everything.
Yep.
Talk about a consummate professional. Like, just go with the flow and see what but
yeah. Well, he's like, when you look at, again, this is my theater door coming out, but and he's a military guy, no theater experience, but if you've ever done improv, the philosophy is always that you say yes and. So whatever your partner says, your partner hands you, a phone and says like, look at this delicious banana. Like, you take it and say yes, and this banana, that's the whole philosophy of improv.
He played a great straight man.
Cash was like that in wrestling. That no matter what, and we worked well because I'd get creative with stuff, and he would say, "Okay, yeah, let's do that."
Right.
You know, okay.
I would definitely love to see that happen one more time, without a doubt.
One more time, because creatively, I mean, Lord knows, but if we were doing like the 5th and the deciding match, like there's a lot of stuff that we've talked about, like, all right, if we're going out in a bang.
That's right.
So if I have to go through a table, it's like, it's the last time I'm going to do it, but I'm going to go through we've talked about stuff where like that last match would be something that we'd look to steal the show. And honestly, like when it comes to wrestling, which I think, sometimes I think that there's a flaw with a lot of wrestlers, like you should always be looking to steal the show. And you shouldn't, just because of the fact that I or Rocky have not been in the business as long as some others, you shouldn't look at us and say, oh, they shouldn't do that because then my match isn't going to go over. Yeah, no, be better. Just be better. Like you shouldn't like tell somebody, oh, you shouldn't do that in your match because of my match. No, like if I stole the show from you, that's on you.
Right.
Especially someone who has no experience. And, I've been in the wrestling business for a cup of coffee. If I'm able to steal the show from you, that's like, on you. That's Allie.
No. All right. So Zim is obviously gone. We happen to lose him. It happens here from time to time. But clearly, man, we're going to have to get you back on. We've gone through two recordings worth, man. And this is great. This is absolutely great. It's always,
it's fun.
Dude, it's great having you on as a guest, man. But like, I think we really kind of like how I thought when we first started doing the primetime shows, it's like I'm doing the podcasting now, and I've never really done it, as consistent as I wanted to. But I'm learning, like, we got something here. Like, it's, the first episode I did with Cash, it was like kind of like the starter episode. But now I'm like, okay, I want to do it in a more professional environment. I want to get like more like banners and stuff hanging behind me. I want to bring it somewhere where it needs to go. But like there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of stuff that you definitely have experience with the BBWF. There's a lot of growth that happened with the BBWF. And dude, I want to enhance that. I mean, if this goes to a show, I'm not going to sit here and act like we don't have the capability of doing one more. But one thing I wanted to touch on too is like after everything kind of happened and we kind of started like a reboot of Primetime. It was different. Now those episodes are still up there. Those are still available. And there was a different role. Like it went from you and I was not wrestling. You were not wrestling. You and I were more you were the GM.
Right.
We did commentary. I think it was Cash and Vargas against Robbie and Tom, I think, for the tag titles or whatever. Like
I think right.
That to me, that was pretty solid. I mean, that was somebody like Cash actually gelled really well with Vargas as a tag team, as Cash.
Yeah, I thought they were. I mean, I was always a fan, and I wish there was more of this, but I always liked the idea of with tag teams with like the British Bulldogs, the muscle and the quick guy, or the Hart Foundation, the technical wrestler and the powerhouse, like, and I thought they fit that bill well, and I do think if they wrestled more together, they would have gotten even better. There's really solid chemistry between the two of them, and they just worked well together, and they played to each other's strengths, which was good.
Absolutely. And it was funny that at that time the tag team scene was the highlight of Primetime. That was like the biggest. That was everyone's, because the heavyweight champion was Ricky Martinez at the time, and that was leading towards that big Iron Man match with Chad Evans and stuff. But the tag team titles were the hottest ticket on there, and it was good because there wasn't like okay, our biggest run, like the biggest faction there was Dauntless at the time. We had that. But we had Dauntless on like their biggest heels that we went after. And then it was also like, Robbie wasn't on it as much. It kind of gave, and we didn't have a lot of the cast that took up the entire show. Like the other guys had the show back. We kind of took the show back, I think, when the second round of primetime came to be. That's kind of the way I saw it.
Yeah, and I think like when you look at I mean, first off, like I'm so happy for Robbie. So if he's listening to us, like I think like the stuff he's doing and the character he's portraying right now, like
yeah,
and he's got he's another guy that just has a good brain for the business. Like he's someone who, I could see. Like if I'm the WWE, like I'm looking at Robbie as someone like once he's not on TV.
Right.
I would want him in the performance center.
Yeah.
He gets character, he gets storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like he's one of those guys that kind of skates that line. Like he's very pointed when he gives you an opinion, but he's polite and he's honest and he's not being a dick. He'll just tell you straightforward.
Yes.
This is what I think. And I have a lot of respect for him and how he conducts himself. But I think when you look at wrestling and look at the market of pro wrestling, that I don't think a lot of promoters look at is you can't be the WWE.
Right.
You can't be what they are. So like you're talking about like, all right, we're leading towards this big heavyweight championship match. Like in all fairness and no disrespect to the performers, but as far as a fan, why am I going to give a shit?
Right.
But if I'm giving fans really good tag team wrestling, well, talk to me about the tag team division of the WWE,
right?
Because it's not that good. So if you're giving fans good tag team wrestling, then you're fulfilling part of the marketplace that needs fulfilling.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you can market your tag teams because there's not a lot of great tag teams around now. So I do think if we went forward, if we had a solid tag team division and worked on pushing those tag teams,
yes,
we could have had something. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. But I did like really the way Vargas and Cash operated together. That there was definitely something there.
You know what it is? I think a lot of guys, and we've experienced this on our shows as well, is that a lot of guys, maybe they don't think they're going to get to where they want to be, but they want to have the moments. And it's like, okay, well, if I could use this platform to have the moments, or if I could use this platform to do this, and they'll do it. And it's almost to put it, it is a lot of times, right away who's in it for the good of the show, who's just in it for, a quick payday because they weren't booked elsewhere. And they want to be part of something, but they really don't give a shit. Like that's the problem. And we had people that really cared, and it was a huge clash. And it affected the show in a lot of ways. But at least what I know, taking away from it, is that I stayed in contact with the ones who were right for the show, the ones who became friends. Like I consider you a friend. I consider Cash a friend. I just recently got reacquainted with Vargas and Izzy and this and that. And like, I'm rebuilding with a lot of things. I talk to Prince I talk to Robbie every single day. Like he's one person that I've always stayed in contact with. And it frustrates us too, because, what he said, I think I've said it, Robbie said it a lot. We had a lot of fun, even just, aside from the show, there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of camaraderie within the crew. We all got along great. I mean, let's face it, the ones who were going out for pizza at the end of the night, that was your crew right there. Like those are the ones.
That was your ride or die.
Right, exactly. And it got lost, it got strained and everything else. And but when it came back, it's I don't know. I said all things happen for a reason. I kind of look at it like that. And right now, Christ, life has just changed dramatically in the last couple of years for everybody. But like when I talked to Justin about this, when Zim and I had him, he was like, dude, he's like, there's so much stuff, there's so many stories, even stuff like, keep in mind when we started the BBWF, technically, it was 1992. That's when we started, and we did, mind you, we did wrestling, but we didn't do. I guess you could call it technically backyard, but we weren't smash each other with light bulbs. It wasn't that. Like we would do the technical matches. We would it was actually just wrestling. We just didn't have a ring. That was the difference, we were juniors in high school. We didn't know. And then it just kind of just evolved from there. And then when we met Kevin, it was like, okay, well, same deal. I was doing all Kevin's posters and stuff like that, and printing stuff for him in exchange. I would use his ring. And then Gino was the same way. And then we stopped in 2009, but I never thought we would be able to do what we did in 2016. I never thought we'd be able to get to that point. And then it just grew. And I sometimes, a lot of times now I'm going through all the photos as I put together all the stuff. And I'm like, man, that was cool. That was cool. I got little clips here and there. I'm like, this was great. Like it was very interesting how it all played out. A lot of times, there were a lot of times, like when I talked to Cash about it, you know, it's like the elephant in the room, you know, with what happened. And there was a big story, you know, that obviously happened and like how people perceived it. But then when another story came out last June, there were a bunch of people that kind of reached out to me and like, kind of like, well, maybe you got judged a little too hard based off what some people said because you read the internet, you trust the internet first. But I didn't take any of that. Like I took it all with a grain of salt. I'm like, look, the past is the past. Here we are. You know, we're all in different places right now. But it's kind of like, hey, the pandemic's ending. Let's just all start getting reacquainted. And if that's what the podcast does, that's all the podcast does. But if it leads to another event, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've got the place to do it. I've obviously scoured and said, hey, you know, if we could do one more, I know exactly what we would do. Like, I'm not at that point yet, but man, I can't say. 3 people have asked me, like, is this going to lead to a show? And it's hard because I can't say no because I just don't know where this is going to go right now. That's right. Where we're at.
And you can't say yes. So it's
right.
But I mean, I think you bring up a good point, not to get overly philosophical or you know, weird, but like, you know, the pandemic was a really difficult time for a lot of people and a lot of us. And, you know, happy to be coming out of it. But again, here's the esoteric philosophical part of it. The universe was trying to teach us something. The universe was holding class. You know, and if you weren't able to take some lessons out of what's happened over the past year and a half, then I don't know if there's much hope for you as a human being. There were lessons out there to be learned. There was definitely what's important and what maybe isn't as important, and how to enjoy times when they're there and when they're happening, and being more present in certain aspects of your life. So I think that there were pretty significant lessons to be learned, and coming out of it, like I hope that most people take those lessons and improve upon whatever they need to improve upon, but just take those lessons that we're being taught. Because I mean, to me, the universe was shouting at us. It wasn't just it wasn't a polite class. It was the teacher was up there yelling at us. And if you didn't catch the lessons, well, then I don't know.
Yeah, and I learned it, man. Because I mean, I know before this, I was an extreme workaholic. I was dealing with some things from my past, and I took a fall for a lot of things. I made my mistakes. My mistakes that I learned is that, you know, I took the fall when I didn't have to, you know, and there was a lot of things personal wise that I was dealing with that a lot of people didn't know. I didn't know well enough to ask for help when I probably should have. And I didn't want people to be burdened by my stuff, but like, I also was a workaholic, and I just dove myself into a career into which I got burned by it. But now, dude, like coming out of this, like going back to work, doing what I'm doing, everything else, it's more controlled. 5 o'clock, I'm done. I'm
right.
I mean, I was burnt out. I mean, I'm trying to learn to enjoy more life and value things, and like being more around family and this and that. I mean, keep in mind, like I look at my grandmother in that regard, man. I mean, I literally saw her for the first time since February of 2020. And mind you, her brother died while this was happening. She couldn't go to the funeral. And I'm like, man, like, I mean, when I lost my grandfather, that was hard enough. Anyone who knew me, like everybody, like that was very, very hard for me. She's the only grandparent I got left. Imagine, like, God forbid something happens to her and nobody can't deal with that. Like, it's crazy. And if anything I learned from this whole pandemic, it is true. The oldest, simplest saying is that life is too damn short. and you can't take it for granted. You can't, like, if you have an opportunity, go for it. What do you got to lose? Like, experience all you could experience, you know, like I will not have that kind of stuff ripped away from me again. Like, that's, you can't. I'm not going to go to my grave with regrets. Like, everyone's got kind of everyone's in a different position. Like you said, the universe was definitely, I agree with that 1,000%, 100% shouting at us. Like, so many people learned, so many people didn't. And now that everyone's coming out of it, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it like crazy with some people who are still not going to learn from this, and other people.
Right.
But either way, man, I'm glad you got on this show. This was a great.
Yeah, this was fun.
It's a great episode, man. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
No problem. Thanks.
We will talk in the very near future.
There was a lot of.
Yeah, man.
My iPad is like verge of dying.
Right? No, we will talk again, man, in the near future. And hey, let's go out for drinks too, because that's been a long time too, man.
It's been way too long.
Seriously, let's plan something. I'll talk to you probably during the week, but thank you so much for being on the show.
All right, cool. No, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, man. Take care and have a good night.
Take it easy, man.
Be good.
Bye.